Just a bit up ahead. Maybe 200 steps until you reach the clearing. Any noise?" The voice blared into his ear, and the man wiped his brow. "No. Nothing. My instinct tells me they're all dead already anyway. I can smell it in the air too, and there are strange markings on the tree. Looks like the worst case scenario happened, if you ask me." He could hear static on the line, pulled out his gun and repositioned it beneath his jacket. Easy access, he thought with a bleak grin. Only, if they were all dead, and his eyes didn't deceive him right now, the gun would turn out to be less than useless. He was one of the unlucky ones, as he called them. Born with a sight and senses other people didn't possess. He had started having nightmares at 3 years old, at least according to his mother, and used to keep both his parents awake day and night. Being afraid of the monster under your bed definitely was worse when you could see it, hear it, and feel its presence every time you went to lie down. This curse he had been born with had almost driven him to take his own life a few times. That was until he had finally found an outlet, a purpose he could follow. The things he had done in the name of the company that now employed him were, at best, questionable and at worst abhorrent, but they had given him ways to keep all the other monsters at bay. That was enough for him. He sped up with his hand holding onto the gun tightly and his thumb ready to flick off the safety while he climbed the last small hill. "You should see them soon," the voice in his ear reminded him again. She was part of the company as well, staying in contact with him throughout the jobs, supporting him with almost everything he could need. "How's it looking?" He shook his head and suppressed a curse. There were markings on all the trees. The patterns of an unnatural wind that had blown through here, pulling along things that shouldn't be out and about. Something bad has happened here. I'd guess some kind of extermination event. The whole area stinks. It looks like hell has dropped by for a visit. Static filled his ear again, as it always did when the woman kept breathing, but not talking into the mic. "You can pull back any time, but we would like visual confirmation. The camp should be just up ahead." He started jogging up the slope and could smell the acrid stench now coming from everywhere. This was a bad place, his instinct told him, and Aaron pulled in his elbows to not touch a single thing this demonic wind that had blown through here had infected. The ground beneath his feet got even as he finally reached a small plateau on top of the hill, but as he looked ahead, Aaron couldn't help but mutter a curse of his own. In all the years he had traveled around the world, from bustling cities to remote villages, he had never seen anything like this. The woods, the trees, they were all glowing in this strange blood-red light that seemed infectious and malignant. Confirmation on the worst-case scenario. Whatever has been set free here has pretty much ravaged the whole area. I can see no movement now, but it's clear that something devastating has been released here. The static droned in his ear while he slowly took another step and put the gun back into its holster. It wouldn't do him any good here anyway. "Okay, Aaron. You want to fall back and we'll send in a response team?" His eyes were darting back and forth between the trees down there. This glow that was emanating from deep scratches in their bark seemed far too bright to be old, but he still couldn't see a single trace of anything moving around in it. Whatever had come here had disappeared again on its own, or had been banished at the end of some kind of ritual. Are you sure they only found a single book in there? The voice on the other end of the line seemed hesitant. As far as we know, yes. The guy who led the expedition has only been interested in a certain one, and many of us didn't believe it even existed in the first place. Can you take a closer look on your own? Every part of his mind told him to run away, but Aaron nodded, then affirmed her question before slowly starting to slide down the other slope, heading toward what looked like a psychic wildfire. He could see the remnants of tents strewn around the brightly glowing area and smelled the metallic odor of blood on the breeze. The closer he got, the worse the destruction around him became. Claw marks riddled the trees 50 steps out already, as if a whole host of sharp-fanged beings had rushed the clearing up ahead. People had died here, screaming in agony. He could still hear their voices echoing through the ether. One tent is still intact, Aaron said, and hoped that the energy surrounding him wouldn't fuck too much with his equipment. It was a bit off to the side, away from the epicenter, or whatever one could call such a place. Aaron headed toward it first. There was a strange smell here too, but one different from the stench between the glowing trees. He could see a slight, lingering shimmer surrounding the tent. Probably whatever had protected it from the incoming mob of spirits. Aaron reached it, while static still filled his ear, pulled back the flap of the big tent and looked inside. A cot, a chair, and an opened but empty chest were all he could see. The one with the book must have stayed here during the attack, then left soon after. Found the place and traces of the grimoire. It seems to be real from what I can tell. He probably tested it out on the other people around, then left in a hurry. Understood. Can you follow his trail? Aaron nodded again, then gave her his answer out loud. Shouldn't be too hard. I'm guessing he didn't run back toward the town they'd come from, by the looks of it. Probably didn't want the questions and accusations. I can try and get a feeling for where he went, but we might need an extraction team to catch him before he gets to the next city. Understood. We'll send someone out as soon as we have an approximate direction. Aaron pulled back from the entrance and watched the soft flickering of the air around here. The object had gotten carried at chest height by someone a bit smaller than himself. He had seen photos of the guy. It would fit. And if that man tried to walk through those woods, he wouldn't get very far very quickly. I'll take up the pursuit. The guy shouldn't be in too good a shape. That was the static again. Aaron looked past the tent and at the spot where the trees were glowing. From this position, he could see the destruction far more clearly. As if it had been done with it in mind. The ground was torn open, and he could see hands sticking out from the earth in a cruel parody of a burial. Aaron caught a whiff of fear in the air. Whoever the guy with the book was, he had seen it as well, had probably decided then and there to run away. He forced himself to stop looking at the strange display, turned, and set off after the one with the book, while the woman in his ear already informed him of the features of his target again. Following his trail was easy. There were obvious signs of where this guy had broken through the underbrush around the clearing, and lingering smells and traces of emotion in the air. This book gave off far too much energy to be normal, Aaron's instincts warned him. He could almost see its outline floating in the air and felt a strange chill every time he passed through one of them. Heading west, he said out loud, and heard silence on the line for a few more seconds. There's nothing there for miles on miles, the female voice informed them. Cities are to the north and south, while the one they had come from is in the east. Aaron felt his shoe getting stuck in some mud and pulled it free before speeding up again. Maybe he wanted to get away from people? Or he was in a panic and simply tried to run from the scene behind me. Whatever the case, he's insanely dangerous right now. The woman agreed. No, the only problem was what that guy would do next. Even though it was a good sign that he was apparently keeping his distance from overcrowded areas, he had to know that people would be on the hunt for him already. And once he got paranoid, he would start laying traps. Aaron felt a cold chill at the thought. Do we know what this book is capable of? He asked after a few seconds. No idea. There are lots of myths surrounding it, but nothing concrete. Everything from the dancing plague to cattle deaths to outbreaks of what looked like pestilence have been brought in connection with its appearances. But we don't even know its cover. Be careful, Aaron. It's dangerous. He couldn't help but chuckle humorlessly. Yeah, that scene from before had told him as much already. The only question was how many other spells and incantations were in this damned book. He followed the trail of broken twigs and lingering energy through a thicket and across a small brook. The man must have stopped here for a few minutes, he thought. He could see deeper tracks in the soft mud where the guy had knelt down. Probably to wash his face or get blood off his hands. Aaron took a sip himself. His backpack was full of water and rations for days on end, but he still didn't want to touch any of that without knowing how long he would be out there. He had no idea how much of a head start this guy had on him, so keeping a steady pace was essential in catching up. At least the tracks were all still visible and easy to follow. Aaron got up on his feet and started to jog. If he's walking due west, how long until he can get out of these woods? The answer came after a few seconds already. Depends on the speed, and if he keeps going in that direction, we're running some simulations. 3 days minimum if he keeps a quick tempo. The dossier about the guy flashed in Aaron's mind. No extracurricular sports during his education. No hobbies or anything else that pointed toward him being fit or in shape. He wouldn't suddenly start turning into a marathon runner just through reading the book. At least, that was his hope. Aaron watched the ground he was running along and could see slight indentations in the wet dirt. The steps were short, like from a leisurely walk. Good. It was important to get this guy before he found a way out of there on his own. There was no telling what would happen otherwise. I'm still following these traces and tracks. The guy wasn't in a hurry, he informed the woman through the earpiece while keeping his tempo up. A good sign. Oh, a very, very bad one. Aaron remembered his first run-in with a real spirit, not one of those apparitions that couldn't interact with the world in any meaningful way. He had been 16 and scared of practically everything, but in a misguided attempt to connect with someone, he had tried befriending some of the kids on his street. They had shown him around town and had been especially eager to teach him about that one abandoned house on the outskirts. Those kids he had decided to trust had locked him in there, and from then on, Aaron hadn't been scared of the apparitions under his bed again, since in the house he had seen what truly lurks in the shadows. A malevolent presence, something that had once been human but had refused to leave its place, had stalked him through the dark and desolate building. He had seen it, felt it, heard its whispers, and yet, even though it had tried to hurt him, he had escaped it. Running away from them was always an option. Almost all the time, it was the best thing one could do. Back then, he had jumped from a window and raced back home, his face and arms scratched and bloody. Only now, he was running after someone who was able to drag those things back from wherever they had gone and make them attack innocent people. He watched the footprints disappearing in what looked like a small trail made by the local deer population and followed them into the darker, deeper parts of the forest. Here, the impressions left by the book seemed to shine brighter than the blocked sunlight from above, and Aaron stayed close by those lingering, shifting colors that hung in the air. It wouldn't take too long to get out of here, he promised himself, even though he knew that that was nothing but a lie. Those woods seemed ancient, completely untouched by any kind of civilization, and no matter how much he concentrated on it, he could hear neither planes nor cars passing by in any direction. They were pretty much isolated in here. Aaron continued jogging until his lungs started to hurt from exhaustion. How much time had he gained? A few hours? The guy, if he really was as out of shape as he hoped, would hardly manage to walk for more than a few miles before needing a short rest. He had pretty much run after him for 2 hours already. It was still dark around him, and the trails he was following were winding themselves without what seemed a single thought through the woods. The ground beneath him changed from soft and muddy to hard-packed clay and bark more than a few times, while the air felt stuffy, hot and almost unbreathable. Aaron was about to start running again as his instinct suddenly screamed at him to stop right where he stood. Something in the pattern of the book's lingering impressions was changing in front of him. He could normally see its softly shining outline hanging in the dark air, but not even 20 steps ahead, it suddenly changed, got brighter and turned horizontally. The man he was pursuing had read from it. Why? Well, there could be only 2 reasons. Some problem in front of him, or someone he was wary of following his trail. He was getting paranoid, although maybe it wasn't paranoia if people really were after him. Aaron stopped his steps and looked more closely. The man hadn't rested here long, had quickly used a spell, then set off again. He could even see where. Right in one of the darkest spots of the trail, something was whirling around. It looked like a tiny vortex hovering over the ground, swirling through the air. Aaron's instincts were piping up again. A magical landmine. Something that would either slow him down or kill him if he touched it. took a step closer while watching it. The energy in there was starting to spin more quickly, reacting to his presence already. He walked off the trail and into the underbrush, taking a bigger detour through old, crumbling wood and scratching vines. What he didn't do was take his eyes off of this thing. It wasn't something he had ever seen before. Magic that didn't activate immediately. Some part of him wanted to know what it would do, but not enough to really test it out by sticking his leg in there. He kept his distance, then re-emerged from the undergrowth 15 steps behind the still swirling energy. It seemed to try and extend in his direction. He's putting out traps. If you have my exact location, send some people with experience out to clear those things. I wouldn't want anyone to step into one of those, Aaron said, as he forced himself to stop looking back at this trap. That's not going to be possible, he got as an answer shortly after. We're not some non-profit or charity. It should disappear on its own after a few days, right? He was shaking his head, but set off again anyway. Let's hope so. Aaron took another step, then screamed as suddenly something started moving right in front of his feet. He could only see it for a moment, a swirling dark storm that grew in a split second, with what looked like tendrils shooting out toward his boots. There was a sharp hiss in the air as strange voices filled his ears, and something cold shot up his leg. A second trap, hidden by the first. Aaron jumped to the side, yet could feel its tendrils burrowing into him. Ice-cold needles pricked him as the hiss changed into voices. He could feel the skin on his shins breaking open, and did the only thing he still felt capable of. Jumping forward, he dove across the swirl expanding beneath him on the ground. The hissing and voices got louder, drowned out the static and screaming coming from his earpiece. He could feel it. In the center of the swirl, blood-red energy started to glow and expand. Aaron stared down while he jumped and witnessed something that looked like an eye opening. This thing was monstrous. Its energy still tore at his legs, cut into his skin as he screamed in pain, then landed on the ground on the other side and shot up again. The pain was blocking out all his other thoughts. Only one thing remained. Run. He could feel the coldness shooting up his legs and into his hip already. This thing wanted to hold him in place, devour him right here. He needed to get away from it and somehow make it out of its reach. Aaron stumbled and fell into a thicket and felt sharp vines against the palms of his hands, but nothing of that even made it through the fear in his mind. One of the tendrils was still stuck to him and was cutting up the skin beneath his boot. He pulled himself up on the razor-like vine and jumped forward again, and the hissing sound suddenly stopped. Aaron crashed to the ground once more and felt blood running down his legs and into his socks beneath the still whole boots. Shit! He cursed as his shaking fingers touched his legs and another wave of pain shot through his whole body. What's going on there? The voice in his earpiece suddenly returned, and for a moment Aaron thought about pulling it out and throwing it away. Stepped into one of those things, he growled through gritted teeth and forced his fingers to calmly open the laces of the boots. This feeling of blood running down his legs was driving him almost mad. What had the guy with the book done there? How many different things could he conjure up, and what would he do if Aaron finally caught up to him? He pulled off his boot and could see and hear blood dripping out of it. Looks kinda bad. Need at least 20 minutes to get myself back on my feet. The voice in his ear stayed with him as Aaron got the bandages out of his backpack, pulled off the drenched socks, and started cleaning and wrapping up his legs. These cuts weren't too deep, but they ached like fire at the lightest touch. Aaron grimaced through the whole procedure, but still counted himself lucky that those cuts hadn't reached the soles of his feet. If he hadn't reacted as quickly, it would have torn into his flesh and either made him bleed out or driven him mad from the pain. What a disgusting way to stop pursuers. Magical warfare. He groaned as he put on his boots again and laced them up. Maybe the guy was closer than he had imagined. Those traps wouldn't last long, right? He pulled himself up with the help of a tree and took a careful step. It was painful, but manageable. Aaron swallowed a pill and felt himself starting to sweat as he took up the backpack again. Ready to go out. Any news from surveillance? None. We don't have drones here, and the planes haven't spotted our man, came the reply. That wasn't very surprising. Aaron doubted the planes would catch sight of him as well. At least, as long as the guy stuck to those trails. He started walking off the path to stay away from any more of those traps, while keeping an eye out for anything changing up ahead. His instincts told him to be careful, and that the guy wasn't too far off now. Every few steps he had to jump over something, it seemed. The woods outside the path had never been cleared of the undergrowth, and besides the rotting logs and stinging vines, he also had to watch out for roots sticking out of the ground. Aaron jumped over one of those and landed in what he hoped was just a soft pile of leaves, before he suddenly stopped. Something was moving off in the distance. The light was pulsing there, weakly. Found the target, he whispered as he looked more closely. The trail of the book's outlines got stronger and thicker, and up ahead he could see the real one, in the hands of the guy who had to be responsible. Do not engage, he heard a response through his earpiece, but already made himself as small as possible to not draw any attention. The guy was simply sitting there on a log by the path, hunched over. Was he sleeping? Resting? Aaron didn't know when he had set off or how exhausted he was when he did, so his resting here, now, was entirely understandable. It would also explain the sudden appearance of traps behind him. He didn't want to be surprised. Aaron snuck out from between the trees and started moving forward right on the border of the path. He couldn't make any suspicious noise. He had to stop the guy from doing something before he got to him. The sight of the camp came back to him. He didn't want to end up like that. His eyes kept focused on the figure still sitting up ahead, unmoving. Aaron reminded himself of his gun. If he had to, he would shoot the guy, especially if he made any sudden moves. His hand slowly wandered under his jacket as he kept creeping along. About 30 steps between them, and the one up front still wasn't moving. He could feel the holster beneath his fingertips. The guy was keeping the book on his lap while he sat there, hunched over. This was perfect. If he had a rifle, he would have taken the shot already. The book was far too dangerous to risk calling out to its owner. He could see the pulsing energy surrounding it. It was intensifying, then diminishing in the rhythm of what looked like a heartbeat. 20 steps. Aaron knew he could take the shot already, but the chance of missing still was too high. If his target rolled off the log and hid, he might be able to set something off before Aaron could get to him. The sound of wet mud beneath the soles of his shoes filled his ears. It was too loud, his instincts told him, but the figure up front didn't move. 15 steps. He pulled the gun out of the holster and flicked off the safety. Just one bullet, right to the head, he told himself. The guy up ahead still sat there, hunched over, but suddenly Aaron stopped in his tracks. His eyes were open and his lips were moving. A cold wind seemed to blow along the path, bringing with it strange colors that Aaron knew other people wouldn't be able to see. He was reading. The sitting guy's head turned and their eyes met. Aaron raised his gun and suddenly all the light disappeared from the world and he could see nothing anymore but darkness. Strange noises filled his ears. Whispers and wailing. Could feel himself shaking. Could see the outlines of strange faces appearing in the endless night. They were talking to him, screaming at him. This wasn't what had happened at the camp, a thought hit him. Another new spell from the grimoire. Aaron stood up and looked around. The noise cancelled out all the other sounds in his vicinity, but he could still feel the mud beneath his soles. Shadows whisked by, but they had no trace of any energy to them. It was nothing but a distraction, a way to confuse. Aaron turned around himself. It was trying to disorient him. This endless night with screams and moving things. But it wouldn't work on him. He could see it, even in the absolute darkness. The shining, pulsing energy of the book. It was still exactly where it had been before, which meant the guy had to be there too. Aaron raised his gun and gave off a shot. The bang cut through the noise as the flash got swallowed by the darkness. Someone screamed. But this time, it was a human shout. Aaron stepped forward and felt soft mud beneath his feet. The darkness around him was receding, and in its stead he could see the path and woods appearing again. Got the target, Aaron whispered, but only heard garbled static for a response. In front of him, the guy was lying in the mud, moving slowly with an open book beside him. He could still see the swirling energy of the object. It pulsed more quickly now. "Run!" the voice from his earpiece screeched. Aaron shook his head. The static was getting louder instead of subsiding. He could feel a vibration in the air, but this time it wasn't from some unnatural cause. A whirring sound filled the surroundings. "Jammer! Got you! Run! Aaron!" The panicked voice screeched in his ears through the loudest static yet. He looked up and could see a big shadow falling on the path. A helicopter, no, two, hovered right above him. Those weren't here for him. It wasn't his company's support team. Aaron looked back at the book, lying on the muddy ground. Not a single speck of dirt had made it onto the white linen cover. Its title was glowing in the most unnatural tones he had ever seen. Someone else was here as well. For the book, no doubt. He looked up again and could see men with guns trained on him. A strange whisper filled the air. It was coming from the book. A voice so strange and malevolent, Aaron could feel his already shaking fingers losing grip of the gun. It was promising him that he could save himself. All he had to do was pick it up, jump over the already dying body of its last owner, and read. Aaron felt another gust of wind and heard a rope being dropped from one of the helicopters. People clad in all black were descending. They wouldn't even give him the chance to speak. Aaron could feel the guns still trained on him.
Decide!
The voice from the book screeched, and he jumped forward as the first shot rang out.